Hello, my name is host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People. And this morning's video I would like to direct towards the issue of expectations and implicit knowledge. Let's begin with the second word, or term of art, implicit knowledge. An expression which we probably have less familiarity with than we do expectations. Implicit knowledge refers to things that we know without having to think about them at all, the facts that are evident to us as facts that we utilize in doing our reasoning or in drawing additional conclusions. So, an example of implicit knowledge is the fact that we know what something is used for. When I see this lighter, I already know what it's for. I know how to use it. I know what it'll do when I do this. And if you give it to me, excuse me, sorry, I got something in my eye. If you give it to me along with one of these, I will combine the two to accomplish something, namely light a cigarette. So I know how to get this thing lit on fire. I don't have to think this. I don't have to think through the process. It's implicit knowledge. So there's implicit knowledge about concrete things like that, but there's also implicit knowledge about human beings and metaphysical things. So if I walk into a room and two people are alone in the room and they're talking, and I abruptly enter the room, or actually, let me change this, and I enter the room quietly from around, it's at the end of a hall, there's no door, and I sort of quietly am walking down the hall, and maybe it's carpeted, can't hear me walking. And when I walk in the room and see the two people, I will know probably pretty quick if they are fighting or mad at each other. I will understand from their body language, their facial expressions, stuff like that. Now, the thing about cognitive functions is they relate to this implicit knowledge thing very closely. The extent to which I implicitly know that lady's mad at that dude right now is going to relate to how high up FE is in the stack. And everybody implicitly knows the most obvious signs, unless assuming you're within the standard range of normal human consciousness. Everybody knows, like, if the lady's screaming at the guy and crying, that she's not happy. But if you have FE in the dominant slot, well, then you know with subtle cues what somebody with FE lower in the stack might not pick up on right away. So implicit knowledge is linked to what you value, what you prioritize, and it's linked to where your attention is focused. My attention is focused on people's facial expressions and their body language, and that's the sort of implicit knowledge I'm going to develop increasing deafness with. You might think of implicit knowledge as a type of heuristic rule of thumb that is reflexive rather than applied, consciously applied. So what does all this have to do with expectations? Well, of course, people develop expectations based on snapshots of a system in action, and based on a formulation of system rules that they've created in their head that's an approximation. that tries to catch the big ones and not get the washout ones. So in a lot of systems, when force is applied in certain directions in a system or along certain channels, then it dies out. It just washes out, right? Like there's no progress to be made in that area. So when the wind blows a leaf into a corner and it gets stuck underneath a fence, like a pokey part of metal under a fence, it can be very difficult for the wind to go any further with it. The wind has done as much action as it possibly can do. If that leaf is going to be moved further, neither the wind nor a leaf blower is going to get it out from under there. You're going to have to either stand right in front of it with a leaf blower and be like, or eventually you're going to have to actually reach down and pick it up, or get a rake or something. So that's an example of how a system has limits in certain areas. It's kind of a dumb example, but it's an example. A better example would be something like that was a terrible example. That wasn't even an example of what I was talking about. An example of what I was talking about would be something like the fact that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter much that whether or not you messed up some little detail in this area or that area, if the whole thing works out well, okay? So there's certain things like that, but then there are other details that cause the whole system to collapse. And then, well, you have to attend to that detail. If you don't get that part down, then the whole thing won't even work. But then these other details are less important, right? So certain details in a system have different levels of impact and can withstand amounts of wrongness at different levels. Like, you can successfully have a basketball game in which people commit fouls, but you cannot successfully have a basketball game without a basketball. They're both contrary to the rules, but only one of them is system destroying. Expectations then follow from implicit knowledge, and implicit knowledge is often not adequate to distinguish between these complex levels of weight that individual actions or events within a system have, and why they might weight differently in terms of influence upon the system. Why it's not necessarily a bad idea to commit a penalty in a sport is a good example of that. Well, remember our goal, remember the system whole, and focus on that instead of the fact that this is contraindicated by the rules and by what we would normally consider to be implicit knowledge of the game. Or you might also say there are instances where the team ought to do things that are contrary to implicit knowledge of the game that are circumstantially specific. Like, you might never put your pitcher in baseball back-to-back days because it's not good for their arm or something or whatever. But let's say it's the playoffs, you might have less rest time for the pitcher or something. This is another bad example. I'm trying to get a good concrete example of a difference between implicit and explicit knowledge. But you get the gist of it. And it's a blurry line sometimes. and depending on how familiarized you are with a given area of study, so to speak, there may be, in fact, why do you keep making sound and then there not be anything? Anyway, I got derailed here in the middle of this thing. I was going so strong and then I sort of fell apart and started rambling. I'm going to bring back to expectations. So I set good expectations here early in this video for a sound, solid video. Those expectations may have actually carried you through to this moment here, as I failed to fulfill those expectations during a stretch of kind of chaotic rambling there. You may have determined that your expectations were not being fulfilled and left the video. Regardless, your implicit knowledge is what allows you to operate as though things were continuing unchanged, even when things change a little bit. And your threshold for that, what's your threshold for how frequently you check back and forth between your expectations and the data in front of you, is going to depend on the level of implicit knowledge that you have coming into play. So if your implicit knowledge regarding video quality, what you want the video to do and stuff, is very high, then you'll have very little tolerance for failure within the video. It'll just take a second of failure for you to be like, I don't know. You might not change it. You may still logically then compare against the alternative and say, well, regardless of the failure, it's less failure than the alternative, so I'm going to continue watching it. Or you might, I don't know, who knows what you might do. Individuals, though, have these expectations regarding other people. We can utilize that in our dealings with people, hopefully only in ethical ways, but it's important to remember that perceptions of, well, in debate they call it perceptual dominance. When you carry yourself as though you are clearly the winning team, regardless of how you performed. And it's important in life as well to recall that people treat you and think of you as you position yourself to a point. And the whole way a given situation proceeds can be determined by how you set expectations and how you take advantage of this implicit knowledge that people have that they rely on so much. If you implicitly know that if you implicitly know that the person knows what they're doing and they're competent and in charge and can handle shit and are running a tight ship by how they carry themselves and by how they present, then most of the time, most people don't spend a lot of time questioning that. The thing to remember is that NTs are actively aware of that stuff. NTPs are particularly aware of all the subtext stuff. And so it's hard for us to exactly imagine how it is for the majority of the population, which is they aren't actively considering these vectors. They aren't thinking about how their social hierarchy stuff plays out, you know? They aren't spending time and energy worrying about it. And so when they fall into a given set of behaviors that are sort of predictable regarding their position relating to you and a given organizational thing, I'm talking about work stuff mostly, I guess, then I mean, it's not just work stuff. It's like out in the world. basically, you have this experience in life, which is you go through life and you occasionally encounter barriers, and those barriers are always in the form of people. And it's always in the form of people who are either not letting you get to the person who can make a decision, or who are making the wrong decision, and you need to change their decision. So the second kind is harder, actually, by far, because you're not going to get anywhere with them. You have to always get to the person who's going to make an actual difference for you to actually influence the change that needs to be influenced. I mean, to affect the change you need to affect, whatever that might be. Whatever it is that is in your way has their own set of implicit knowledge and expectation-based advantages and disadvantages. If you come up against somebody who understands this stuff well, don't bother doing battle with them. There's no point. I encountered this at Nationals with the tab guy. He's a debate coach too, you know. It's like, Jesus Christ, I'm not gonna be able to posture shit with this guy. The perceptual dominance for me were not at all in that context. So, but in most contexts, it does. And if you go in there asking questions, maintaining that air of an anthropologist, making notes combined with a safety regulator coming in and doing an inspection, you can usually affect the change you want to affect. Thanks for watching Talk with Sense People. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.